Yes, our children, drink deep and feel the searing embrace of the first one. Now it is time for you to acquire what you came for.
The burning in your veins is but a moment of discomfort in your transition to the great beyond. Now we welcome you to your eternity. Drink deeply, have faith, and join us in this sermon.
Welcome back to Koolaid Stand. I'm Steven.
I'm Jet.
And Jet, I understand that you just went on vacation and got back.
I did. I got back like half an hour ago.
Yeah, so welcome back to the second part of my first ever two-part episode on Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Thanks.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the first episode from 2 weeks ago, I'd strongly recommend you watch that. But if you just want to stick around for just this one, I can briefly summarize what happened. In 1919, it was determined that a company's ultimate responsibility was generating wealth back to its shareholders, not improving the conditions of its employees or, providing the services or products it is in business for.
Yeah.
From there, the stock market exploded in a good way. Lenders allowed consumers to pull loans and mortgages to be paid off by holding stocks on margin, which means that people had loans and then they were intending that the accruance and value of their stocks would then pay for the interest on their loans. And Hoover stood by and did nothing by pioneering a, quote, voluntary participation system for business regulation. The economy then exploded in a bad way. Banks fell, agricultural support shriveled up, roaming black blizzards destroyed the northern Southwest, and the Great Depression started. Well, Hoover sat there and just asked companies to help out a little and gave tax cuts and then neutered the government and then expedited all their jobs. Unemployment was essentially 25%, and 1 in 5 banks were going insolvent.
God damn.
Fucking crazy. I just listened back to that episode, and it's still, those numbers are just insane to me. God, what a fucking insane time of our country. Just like a quarter of people didn't have jobs. People were so poor they were taking turns eating and spending most of their day laying in bed so they didn't waste the energy.
Yeah, I know this is
absurd.
This is like grade school history stuff in the U.S. I think, but I can't even imagine.
No, I don't think that they when you're a kid, it's hard to grapple with this kind of stuff. But thinking about this as an adult now, I can't imagine just that level of suffering. We already have so much, it feels like now, in a different way. This kind of poverty is just absurd, and I see the trends now, and I'm worried that we'll have something like this again. Actually, that's been while writing these episodes, that's been my predominant concern, is that we now have we have more unemployed citizens than we have jobs available right now.
Mm-hmm.
Groceries are getting more expensive, things are getting worse. Our current establishment doesn't understand how taxes, tariffs, and general economics works. It's just getting more and more concerning as we're cutting away a lot of the foundational metrics that I explained last week and will explain again, are deployed to prevent stuff like this from happening. We forget why shit works and we just start pulling it back, and it gets worse and worse.
Yeah, I'm not really a person with a super strong understanding of the economic workings of our country. But
the political and economic state of our country right now.
Yes, thank you. But economic experts, I keep seeing them having this opinion where they seem to think that we're just kind of waiting for the bubble to burst, right?
Yeah. Especially with AI is a good example. We just keep dumping more and more and more money into AI, and we keep constructing all these facilities and stuff to make it useful, and we keep cramming it into every service and product we have, and it doesn't add anything, and people don't like it. And everyone who does like it just wants to use it to replace people. So we're going to use it to replace jobs, and then it's going to no one wants it anymore, and people stop buying products that utilize it, and people don't utilize it in its own right. So then what happens? I mean, also on top of all of this, we have the government wanting to force. Do you know about this? The government wanted to force Anthropic Anthropic, the company that's responsible for Claude, I think, an AI company.
One of the many.
To allow them to utilize AI to manage kill decisions. The government wants, the government wanted to force Anthropic to allow. So the government has had a deal with Anthropic where they can use their AI for government purposes, like military ones. But Anthropic is like, yeah, but you can't use, we won't allow you to access our systems to basically integrate kill decisions and stuff like that, like automated drones, identification. They won't let them do that. The government's like, no, you're going to, and by the government, I mean the DOD, is like, no, you're going to let us do that. And Anthropic's like, no, we're not doing it. And they're like, well, we're going to give you until the end of this week. I think this is like a week ago. We're recording this on the 3rd of March. We're going to give you until the end of the week to say yes or no. Otherwise, we're going to blacklist you from government deals and we'll ask somebody else. And they were like, no, it's not happening. So they blacklisted and basically put an embargo on Anthropic, and are going with OpenAI now, who are also saying that they won't let them do that either. But I'm worried. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is worrying. For one thing, these companies probably know that their like recognition software isn't like accurate enough. Like I don't think it really works well enough yet to be using it to make decisions about making drone strikes and shit like that. I mean, we know these companies aren't very ethical, but I guess I'm happy they're trying to refuse, but the government also really shouldn't be able to just like say they want a free market and then blacklist companies who don't want their product to be used to kill people either. It's fucked from several different angles, man.
We could do a whole episode on AI, and I've kind of just been avoiding the topic in general. But like, it's
no good.
just because I have so much to say about it, and I don't really know how to put it all into words yet. All that to say, the government is very focused right now on pulling back all of our protections and making everything worse. Like, have they not seen Civil War, Captain America Civil War? Like, having giant vessels that determine and pre-police people is not a good idea. Anyway, and I'm just worried that like we'll spiral out to another Great Depression. I mean, we're already in a recession, so like who fucking knows? Anyway, in 1932, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Democrats swept the election cycle, maintained an absurd majority, and FDR proceeded to swing his insane control of the government to pass massive legislative action and recover the country in 2 separate 100-day spans of the New Deal, which included, but honestly wasn't limited to, establishing frequent and direct populist addresses for the American people with his fireside chats, passing the Securities Act, which requires companies to honestly and regularly disclose status to shareholders, passing the Glass-Steagall Act, which created the FDIC. So if you are able to, any common person is able to pull $250,000 in cash from their bank at any point. Thank you, FDIC.
Yeah, no
Establishing
kidding.
FERA, the CCC, and the CWA. This is basically just massive job creation programs, emphasizing in like making parks and public work, and basically making like public-owned spaces more accessible and usable.
Yeah.
Passing an executive order to consolidate all national parks, cementing the parks program.
Good shit.
Which is awesome. Passing the Agricultural Act, which is federally subsidized farming. That one, he did take a second pass at it that I don't end up talking about, but in general, this kind of results in like the destruction of food. I don't know. This is one of the good ones, in my opinion, but it did support farmers in a time where they couldn't farm. So
right.
Bringing power to rural America.
That one's crazy. I didn't know
Nuts.
that that electricity wasn't just in every town at that point until last episode. I might sound dumb for that, but I didn't know that.
It's not something I thought about until this.
Yeah, exactly.
Saving the entire Tennessee Valley from poverty at the cost of current day environmental problems. Passing the National Industrial Recovery Act, that's NERA, creating the WPA and the NRA, not that one. More government-supported jobs through the WPA, which also included a union support program in an attempt to federally regulate corporations and end child labor. This wasn't totally successful. The NRA was the regulating companies part, but it was still participatory, so it like kind of just didn't work. Establishing legal support for unions and their bargaining rights. Establishing the PWA for even more jobs off of the WPA. This is like the hiring people to hire people to like build a building, paint on the building, record the painting, take photos of the painting, take photos of the photos, like all that kind of shit. He pulled us off the gold standard. He restructured our financial systems to support citizens, establishing the Fannie Mae and the FHA. These are basically ways to make housing affordable. We have other problems that make this not so useful right now, but
Yes.
we wouldn't really be anywhere close to being able to afford homes without Fannie Mae or the FHA. And most importantly, he made the Social Security system.
FDR, FDR.
We love him. That was his first term. Towards the end of his first term, however, FDR had begun to wear out his welcome with the Supreme Court, as I had mentioned, who had begun striking down some of his policies. Their ultimate grievance was that he was taking too much power into the executive branch, was operating outside of the Constitution, and in general were doing what they do best, being a collective of curmudgeonly government-for-life assholes who oppose all change forever. This much has been consistent in their entire existence as an establishment, and ultimately would draw the ire of FDR if he won his second term.
I kind of understand the too much power in the executive branch concern with FDR. I don't think a president had really gone this far before, right?
No. His control was unprecedented. Like most of his everything as a president, but yeah, it was pretty crazy. Look, I'm aware I'm fooling no one. We all know FDR won his second election. Let's see how hard he won this time.
All right.
With a 61% voter turnout, which is up from last cycle, incumbent FDR would obliterate Republican candidate Alf Landon, 523 electoral votes in 46 states to just 8 votes and 2 states.
Holy shit.
Dude.
Is this like the biggest margin ever? It's got to be close, if not.
I don't know for sure off the top of my head. I considered looking it up, but like short of 2 states, he clean swept the entire country. He's one of the most popular presidents of all time.
So this is probably Alf Landon's home state, and who the fuck knows?
Maybe New York or some shit. Yeah, I don't know. Last run, FDR beat Hoover with 472 in 42 states to 59 in 6 states, with a 56.6% turnout. 60.8% of the popular vote. Franklin wasn't just a winner. He was the people's president.
Oh, kidding. God damn.
He inspired so much confidence. More people came out, more people voted, and he won even harder than last time.
Even
harder. I said the last vote was a landslide, but this is somehow even more impressive. You can take your modern approval rates and just shove them, dude. This is what approval looks like.
Yeah, I've never seen it. You've never seen it.
No. Since the Hill changes at weird intervals, and I'm not really going to explain that, it's like Senate. Okay, I'll try to. Senate seats, I know, are like you hold them for 6 years, but only 1/3 of each state's Senate is up for vote every 2 years. It's fucked up. I have to catch us up though, because there's a voting cycle in between. And the numbers are all weird. Anyway, I'll catch us up, but you'll see that the controlling leverage FDR held with, which pissed the Supreme Court off so much, would not be loosening in any way. In 1934, the Senate slid further left with 9 more seats up to 69 seats for Democrats and 10 seats lost for Republicans down to 25.
Wow.
And of course, 1 seat gained for farmer labor.
Yeah.
Let's go. And the remaining seat, though, went to the Progressive Party, a new third party involved. Okay. Then in 1936, Republicans obviously failed to stop this bleeding because the Dems would climb another 6 seats overall to 75, with Republicans down to 8 more to 17 seats total. Farmer labor goes up 2, Progressive holds at 1, and another seat going to another third party just called Independent.
Was it just an independent guy, or was it a party called the Independent?
The Independent Party.
Okay. Wait, so is this third parties have almost as much as Republicans at this point, right?
Together, yeah, just about.
If we combine them, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
We're going parliament mode.
I know. The House of Representatives was the same story. In 1934, Dems took 9 more seats, so they went up to 322. Republicans lost another 14, down to 103. Farmer labor, unfortunately, did lose 2 seats, down to 3 seats total, all for the last 7 seats to be held by the Progressive Party. And in 1936, Democrats managed to take another 12. up to 334. Republicans lost another 15, down to 88. Farmer Labor got their 2 seats back, so they have 5, and a whole nother seat went to the progressives.
All right.
Bro.
This is some crazy shit.
Nuts.
Again, I can't even imagine it happening like this today.
Me neither. A third party ever getting to government at this point just doesn't seem possible to me. And this is just crazy.
Yeah, not in any kind of significant way.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt did not just secure his position. He tightened his damn grip. If the Supreme Court was crying now, it definitely wouldn't like this. And this goes to show that while there may have been some inter-party scuffling about FDR and his directives and goals, ultimately it amounted to nothing. The people loved him, and they knew full well that the Republicans didn't have their best interests in mind. Maybe the Democrats didn't either, but their relatively independent fireside chat daddy FDR clearly did. And they wanted him to have everything he needed to keep trying. At his inauguration, he would promise to continue fighting for the nation's underprivileged. Quote, the 1/3 of the nation ill-housed, ill-clad, and ill-nourished. I want to point out real quick, he didn't say homeless. FDR said ill-housed, people experiencing homelessness. Like, that's just the level of care and compassion he had for people. It's so impressive.
That this language is probably also him trying to include people who are living in Hoovervilles, like the shanty towns, right? They have a place to live, but
not
good
really.
One.
Yeah. So like, it's just great because nowadays people would encourage you to say, instead of a homeless person, someone experiencing homelessness. And I try to make this modification myself because having a home shouldn't define what type of human you are. But the fact that in 1936, FDR was using language like that is I just think highlights how compassionate he was as a person.
Yeah, I think it shows that he's actually thinking about these people and what they're experiencing instead of just classifying them.
Yeah, or deciding to agree to like help them based on posturing or like to make his votes look good or whatever.
Yeah.
With the next 4 years squared away, FDR turned his eye to one of the greatest deficiencies in our government, the Supreme Court. Since they had been sniping at him for the last couple of years and clearly demonstrated they'd continue to do so, Mr. Fix Everything would threaten to fix the fucking Supreme Court.
Uh-oh.
See, the deal with the Supreme Court is it's composed of 9 judges, 1 Chief Justice, and the other 8 are associate justices. Each judge is appointed by the current president at the time the seat is open, and then that judge will be granted that position until they step down, or 99% of the fucking time die at the goddamn lectern. By 1936, the court consisted of this: the 4 horsemen, and I'll let you guess what party they like to vote for.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
A cluster of 4 conservatives, the 3 musketeers, a trio of liberals, and 2 swing votes with no cheeky name, one of which being the Chief Justice Hughes himself.
The swingers.
The swingers. I'm not going to let it slide that even back in 1936, conservatives are such fucking assholes. They refer to themselves in this position of power as the 4 horsemen in reference to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
This reminds me of like Bush's cabinet when the U.S. was in Iraq, when they were calling themselves the Vulcans.
Oh my God.
They just want to have like a cool warmongering name. And it's like, yeah, you're really giving yourself up here. You're really showing us your agenda just by the nickname you gave yourself, aren't you?
I think the name for the military operation that just almost probably put us back into war in the Middle East was called like Operation Epic Fury or something like that.
Epic Fury. Did you see the picture of Trump in the like operation room or whatever with like a map behind him that is like showing US positions and plans?
No. Yeah. That's not great.
Yeah. So people are like, are you just trying to make him look cool with a cool map behind him? Or are
we trying to like leak data?
Or is operational security just nothing?
Jesus Christ, man. The ultimate problem was that and continues to be today, that the makeup of the Supreme Court just rarely shifts. The lives of justices long outlast numerous presidencies. this does benefit the long term, I guess, since no president really gets the opportunity to stack the court. But it obviously creates an annoying boys culture in the office that makes the Supreme Court often be a continuous sticking point. And if they decide you or your policies aren't liked by the boys, your time as president can be very difficult, or your time as president can be super easy as you just get away with everything.
Yeah.
Like FDR was experiencing being the prior, they just were starting to like stonewall him on shit. FDR's best chance was to just change the makeup of the court without making anyone step down or violating the establishing covenants of that office. In February, he made a very fair, if not insanely dangerous, suggestion. The danger being that a president was about to try and change one of the three branches of government.
Yeah, this is like changing some constitutional stuff, which you generally can't
Kind
do.
of. I'll explain. In 1937, he proposed a legislation that would add 1 seat for every sitting judge over 75 years of age, which is not a bad idea. I'm okay with that.
1 seat to the Supreme Court?
Yes. So every judge on the Supreme Court that was over 75 years old would then get another counter seat.
Okay.
The issue is at the time, this would have allowed FDR to place 6 new judges in the branch, which served the largest thorn in his side. I cannot express, regardless of how much I like FDR and how confident I am with how he would wield that power, how utterly absurd that idea is for any president.
Yeah, this seems super dangerous. And if you don't like FDR, I get why you'd be furious about this, right? Like, I generally am of the opinion that like 80 years old is probably a little bit too old
to be in government. Yeah.
To be in government. But also everybody that old is a fucking diehard conservative. Most of them.
Yeah. The press obviously exploded. FDR had a nice shiny 5-1 Senate and 4-1 House majority he wanted to test drive. And he was about to hit the gas. And while they called him a wannabe dictator, most people were pretty sure that if this made it to the floor, it'd pass. And it really would. It would have. In fear for their fucking lives, the Supreme Court started to uphold the New Deal's social policies in what is called, this is real, the switch in time that saved the 9.
Wow, what a title.
Old school government shit, right? Where one of the swing judges, Owen Roberts, would stop siding with the 4 horsemen and start consistently voting with Chief Hughes and the 3 musketeers, starting with a vote to establish to uphold a federal minimum wage.
It is kind of annoying that it's just voting blocks in a really small group anyway.
Yeah, it's fucking annoying. By July, FDR's Supreme Court reform bill would hit the floor, which had lost enough support, seeing as it was partly crazy and another part not really needed anymore. Satisfied with the outcome regardless, FDR was fine with the bill not passing because, and I quote, he had not won the battle, but at least won the war. And from this point, the Supreme Court would never, in its continued modern history, oppose a New Deal legislation ever again.
Just with one guy kind of swapping sides.
Basically that and the president going, I'll fucking do it. I'll do it.
And they knew he could, right? So that's they have to, the only way that they can maintain some semblance of the control that they currently have is to adjust enough to satisfy him, but not have him just put this through Congress because he can. Yeah,
if he went in there and addressed them, then they if he kept supporting it the whole way through, it would have passed. Unfortunately, this move did shake the confidence of some of the Democratic supporters, and a few more conservative Democrats betrayed this party lines to join the fucking 10 Republicans still around, as Jet mentioned, with the AirPods in, just thugging it out at work while the rest of society parties without them. The main goal of this small sect of the Hill was to directly oppose all New Deal legislation that came through. FDR was able to pass significant reforms and bills at a considerably reduced rate, but despite the opposition, FDR had more plans to pass, and pass these plans he would.
Pass.
In 1937, FDR would succeed with the Wagner-Steagall Act. These acts are titled after the guys who had them. Okay. Steagall was also part of the Glass-Steagall Act, which was part of establishing the FDIC. So this guy did a lot of work.
Right.
This provided subsidies to local public housing agencies, these are called LHAs at the time, to improve living conditions for low-income families. This would be a predecessor of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, which would ultimately create housing choice vouchers and the Section 8 program.
All right.
This ultimately looked to eliminate what FDR described as, quote, habitations which not only fail to provide the physical benefits of modern civilization, but breed disease and impair the health of future generations.
Okay, so he's really working on the Hoover towns or the Hoovervilles around this time, it seems like.
The primary issue with this is that FDR allowed local governments and citizens to decide where to put that money, instead of creating a system that like decided that for people based on like metrics. I need to remind you, it's not even 1940 yet. This served to increase racial disparities and funded segregated housing. So it did have major unforeseen setbacks and inequalities, but it laid the foundation for modern social housing support today. So there was not exactly a banger, but not because of FDR entirely. A lot of because of the culture of America at the time.
Right.
It's important to remember that the Great Depression lasted all the way through 1941. So we're still in the middle of it. By spring of 1937, America had essentially recovered to roughly the point we were at in 1929, before our economic collapse. Unemployment was down from 25% to 14%.
Jeez.
But for generally unknown reasons, the American economy took a distinct downturn, probably just a hiccup. And especially with everyone being so fragile right now and very on edge, these things can become a little bit more aggressive. The American economy took a little downturn and unemployment began to climb up to 19%. Still nowhere near 25, but it's climbing. Again, as companies sold less product and laid off more workers because of less economic trust, I guess, this dive would last for about 13 months.
Yeah, I think when things are so balanced on a knife's edge, companies and I guess workers too are just a lot more reactionary, right? So it's easy for an economic hiccup to have pretty large effects, I think.
Yeah, and this also created some infighting that I found pretty interesting. Conservatives claimed that the reason companies weren't employing more people and reinvesting was because FDR was being too hard on business.
Oh, come on.
It made them less eager to recover. Franklin heard that and took this to mean that businesses were intentionally monopolizing and colluding to execute what is called a capital strike, where they refused to reinvest in themselves, citing that this was due to their bullshit uncertainty of the environment FDR was creating. This pissed him off so much, in fact, that he ordered the FBI to investigate any signs of companies working with each other to buck this economy, but they weren't able to find any.
Huh. Okay. Do you think that they were actually doing this, or do you know?
I don't think companies were colluding. I do think that companies are greatly prefer conservative policymakers.
Yeah,
so
of course.
When they are receiving more restrictions and they aren't exactly allowed to choose to participate, they're going to probably hold off on reinvesting because they're not secure in the economy. I do think all that's real. I don't think they were. I think the difference is FDR thinks that they were working together to try and fuck it.
So it's not a conspiracy.
I don't think it was a conspiracy. I do think that even though they're wrong, the reasoning is correct for why they were not reinvesting and they were cutting employment again.
Sure, that makes sense.
In 1938, he would pass the Fair Labor Standards Act, one of the most important legal proceedings to our modern work environment today. This act established a federally defined and controlled minimum wage, directly put an end to child labor, defined the 8-hour workday and 40-hour work week, established a system for overtime pay at a minimum of time and a half, and required employers to keep accurate, reviewable, defined records of employees' working hours, wages, and payment cycles. Some employment was exempt from this act, but the categories were so narrow and directly required employers to prove, and I quote, plainly and unmistakably that their employee wasn't covered by this act.
This is another one insuring banks that just feels insane that it didn't exist at this
Yeah.
point in time. And I knew that this was like the case in this era, right?
Yeah.
And that there was a lot of like labor reform going on, but fuck, dude. Wow.
Crazy. And what else is crazy is despite the fact that FDR would go on to pass through one of the most restrictive acts for
Sure.
business operation, the economy would still recover back to where it was. Wild.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I don't think I need to. I'd be preaching to the choir if I added anything to that.
In 1939, the Reorganization Act of 1939, crazy, was
Nice.
passed. This one is important for the general bureaucracy of the executive branch, but honestly, I just don't want to bore you with the details on like how they broke everything down and created offices. But it basically created a bunch of sub-offices and extended defined responsibilities for the executive office. For no other reason, I think now would be a really good time to discuss FDR's angle on foreign policy, just looking at the timeline.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Just for fun, right?
Last episode was way more focused on the Great Depression and Franklin's domestic policy, so I have to catch up a little bit. FDR toted the good neighbor policy. Of course he did. Which was essentially a breakdown of current American overextension into Latin America after the Spanish-American War.
God, yeah.
Resulting in what is called the Banana Wars. I've honestly been waiting for Jet to make an episode on this one. Honestly, this period of time could be its own episode, right? But all you need to know is that America had given itself the right to unilaterally intervene with the domestic affairs of Latin countries in South America. We enslaved them for fruit. And FDR walked all of that back.
Yeah, there was just a quick sidebar about the fucking United Fruit Company, bro. They owned...
And the CIA.
Oh, yeah, because they were really tight. For real. That's not a joke.
It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, they had like their own army, and I think it was either Honduras or El Salvador where they owned like almost 20% of the landmass of the country.
Absurd.
Yeah.
Why? And FDR went, why?
They were basically the government of like a couple small South American nations. Yeah. His policies revoked the America's self-described right to unilaterally affect these countries. So like he dismantled the whole thing. I kept going, but like he did what he could. At his core, FDR was indeed a Wilsonian. Meaning that his background would suggest foreign policy that involves hyper-internationalism and promotion of democratic ideals on a world stage. But he was very careful not to poke the bear that was the American isolationist cultural movement. World War I had already happened, at the time called the Great War, I think. And the American people knew very well that U.S. merchants of death, this is what they called them, profiteered hard by selling arms to essentially both sides of that conflict. Until ultimately we got involved directly. With growing turmoil over in Europe post-World War I, Americans wanted fuck all to do with another European scuffle. This resulted in a series of legislations passed through Congress called the Neutrality Acts, starting in his first term and running all the way to 1939. These ultimately placed embargoes on arms trading with parties active in war, and prevented loans in support to just quote belligerent parties. These terms are intentionally vague, because the American people really wanted nothing to do with this shit anymore. I wish that was a notion that still existed in the general public. People don't really seem to care about war profiteering really at all anymore. Like the general public, I mean, obviously the people who are doing it and the government are all for it.
These acts, the Neutrality Acts, were pretty reactive, and FDR found himself fighting with Congress and begging to offer support to countries that were being harmed by the brewing Axis powers, like China, the Spanish Republicans, or Britain. He painfully had to stand by during the rape of Nanking, the Spanish Civil War, the fascist Italy, or when fascists took over Italy, and then they took Ethiopia, and even forgave Japan when they bombed the USS Panay, which was like a U.S., not a frigate. No, I think there was a frigate that was like guarding a bunch of like oil tankers, and Japan bombed that. Okay. He even stated that if Germany took action against Czechoslovakia, he just wouldn't do anything. FDR smelled a brewing American. Now, remember, he's a Wilsonian and clearly very fatherly. So, like, I didn't really express a ton, but, like, stuff like especially China like really hurt him, and he went to Congress multiple times to beg to be able to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, when it gets to this point, it's hard
Japanese
to
imperialism was
stand.
vicious.
It's hard to stand idle, I imagine.
Yeah. FDR smelled a brewing American involvement in this conflict, and clearly found it difficult to stand by while the forces at will in Europe and Asia gained power, so he quietly prepared for a war by increasing spending on defense without actively engaging in any actual war.
That is a good
And
point. Like, at this point, I think a lot of people probably understood that like a really large scale conflict was inevitable, right? And
Yeah.
it's it's ignorant and counterproductive to just remain isolationist, I think, and just kind of plug your ears, go la 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 la, and pretend nothing's happening, because when shit blows up, you're not going to be in a good position if that's what you've been doing.
Right. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and the powers of Britain and France declared war. Desperate to find any way to help, FDR was eventually able to convince Congress to repeal the embargo on arms trading so he was able to support the current allies overseas. He also began a secret bromance with Winston Churchill, this is real, before he became prime minister, sending telegrams to each other while the conflict brewed. They sent like 17,000 messages to each other.
Oh my God.
Winston Churchill would ultimately win prime ministership in May of 1940. And they genuinely did have they were good friends. In June of 1940, France fell to Nazi Germany, which shocked the whole world, but definitely shocked Americans. See, we're pretty selfish and significantly isolated. When Slavic, Middle Eastern, Asian, and African countries fall to grotesque military conflict, we don't really care so much. And oftentimes we're doing it too. But when France falls, well, now it feels real.
Mm-hmm.
And as a consequence, the isolationist temperament all but collapsed. It still had vestiges. FDR jumped at that opportunity, ramped up defense production with support, and began sending destroyers to Britain to support them.
Yeah, see, that's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah. Remaining isolationist up until that point is like, you're fucking starting at square one when this stuff has been brewing for like a decade. Years.
Yeah. There is one slight hitch here, though. It's mid-1940. The presidential election is coming in 5 short months. See, at the time, the office of presidency had always yielded to tradition. George Washington only took 2 terms in his office before handing it off, and no president had ever dared run for a third.
Yeah.
This wasn't a constitutional limit yet. FDR originally said he was going to follow suit, but as Germany pressed up to the canal against Britain, he ultimately, and his boyfriend was in danger, he ultimately decided that he was the only man equipped enough right now to get America through this. And he secured Democratic Party support because they believed he was the only Dem around that could beat the Republican candidate. So FDR, a man who ran a career of the unprecedented, would be running for an unprecedented 3rd presidential term.
Yeah.
And he would win. It wasn't as drastic as it had been, but it was still a damn strong victory. I'm not going to get into all the numbers this time, but with a turnout of 62.5%, FDR would win 449 and 38 to 82, and 38 states to 82 and 10 states, with 54.7% of the popular vote, which, let's be real, still insane.
Yeah, that is still pretty good.
By 1941, America's drastic rearmament had established the U.S. to be, and I quote, the arsenal of democracy.
Okay, Helldivers.
Yeah. For Allied forces overseas, and with his famous For Freedom speech, FDR cemented in the minds of U.S. citizens that this war was for the very foundations of humanity and basic rights across the globe.
Is that where the name of For Freedom's vodka came from?
I don't know. That'd be cool if that was. In March of probably. I mean, it's associated to that, and I think the freedoms were like the right to life, liberty, freedom of fear, and something else. I can't remember. Okay. In March of 1941, FDR passed the Lend-Lease Act. You probably remember this from high school, which gave him the power to, kinda though, right? This gave him the power to direct huge military and economic aid to Britain and China. The major difference between this and what we did during World War I was that these were donations. These weren't loans. They didn't need to be paid back by the recipients that received them. It's important to note that for right now, America still didn't want to get directly involved in the conflict, just help out where we could.
Right.
This would eventually extend to support the Soviets as well when Germany began to invade, while most of the extreme isolationists in the U.S. referred to FDR as a warmonger, but adversely FDR claimed a staunch position to offer all aid short of war.
And he's not profiteering in the same way that
There's
was
no profit
being
here.
done in World War I because it's a donation, right?
They're just helping, yeah. Japan was not into the amount of support FDR was offering China. After they took French in Indochina, FDR sent another large sum of financial support, which encouraged Japan to sign on to the Axis powers. They did sign the treaty after that. So as a result, FDR placed an embargo on oil to Japan from the US, which resulted in a roughly 95% deficit of their oil reserves.
Did they just import all of it? I'm assuming so.
It seems like it, yeah. They did try to talk it out with America, but we weren't having it. So they elected to target our Pacific Fleet as a means of striking back. On December 7th, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack against a few locations of ours, but namely Pearl Harbor, resulting in 2,403 American
Yes,
fatalities.
this is where we get to learn about some really bad stuff that FDR did.
Yeah. Japanese Imperium is the correct term, right? If you're an empire, you're of the Imperium. That's not just a Warhammer thing.
I think you would just call them the Empire of Japan.
Well, I'm saying Japanese Imperium Admiral.
Imperial Admiral, I think.
Imperial Admiral is I practice his name too. Isoroku Yamamoto's response to this moment is often misquoted, usually to the tune of, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and to fill him with a terrible resolve."
Oh yeah, that's
He did not say
fake,
this.
right?
He did not say that.
I've heard that.
What Yamamoto actually said is significantly less poetic, if not slightly more verbose, and honestly more reasonable. He said, "A military man can scarcely pride himself on having smitten a sleeping enemy. It is more a matter of shame, simply, for the one smitten. I would rather you made your appraisal after seeing what the enemy does, since it is certain that, angered and outraged, he will soon launch a determined counterattack."
That just makes sense.
Yep.
We got to have that American exceptionalism, though. We got to revise that history a little bit.
Yeah. Regardless, he was correct. Any remains of American isolationist sentiment crumbled to dust overnight. FDR stood before Congress and was like, "Boys, come on."
Yeah.
Congress unanimously passed a declaration of war on Japan. Germany and Italy declared war on America, and America returned the favor. We were now part of World War II. And that's all I'm saying about it. That's it. You can watch plenty of documentaries and listen to a million other podcasts of two white dudes talking about the Second World War. But that's it. I'm not going to fucking go through the play-by-play. I do want to take a second to discuss what we became in that moment.
Okay.
I need to ask you, what is fascism?
That's when you control the trains.
Yeah. So you don't have to go back and listen to our tier list of isms. I'll define it again. Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, and ultranationalist political ideology characterized by support for a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual interests for the perceived interest of the nation or race, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. This also results in corporations and citizens dedicating everything they are and can possess to a government that runs the country on all levels. A fascist country doesn't have to have all of these traits, but likely most, it's something that you know when you see.
Oh, yeah.
So when I tell you that the American war machine during World War II took control of companies to produce wartime resources, rationed all food we had, encouraged personal gardening and material rationing to give resources to a military action, all of which was emblazoned by a general climate of hypernationalism, a hierarchy of country above personhood, and suppression of the opposition, I just want you to consider that what we had to become in order to defeat the Axis. I think that moment in history planted a seed of its own.
I would agree with you. Obviously, it's like it's a bit of a different picture than Nazi Germany, right? But yeah, it's an important point to make nonetheless.
And I'm not saying that we were just as bad as the Axis, but ultimately to defeat behemoths like that have infinite resources and people, essentially, You are often forced to use the very tools you aim to destroy to gain purchase. Unfortunately, in 1942, FDR would sign Executive Order 9066. No, I'm not kidding. Order 66. Which would authorize
Order 9066.
which, according to Palpatine, would authorize the forcible relocation of all Japanese and anyone who looked like them to internment camps inland in fear of spies or sympathizers. This is easily FDR's worst move, and this has to be mentioned with all of his greatness.
Yeah, this is awful and truly some fascist shit, like you pointed out. We live in a part of the country where these kind of camps were super prevalent too.
Yeah. The West Coast was rough. People lost their homes, livelihoods, jobs. Like it's fucked up.
Yeah, people. I hear about like Japanese families losing their homes and like they still owned them, but they would just get sold while they were in the camp out from under their noses, and then
or burned and destroyed.
When and if they got to get out and go back home, they didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah. Other than some wartime reorganization efforts, Roosevelt still had an eye for the people that weren't Asian. In 1944, he claimed that Americans should, quote, think of their economic rights as a second Bill of Rights. And we're back to being based. All right, we can party again. Just don't think about the internment camps. And that citizens of America should have the right to adequate medical care, a good education, a decent home, and a useful, remunerative job. In another swing for the damn fences, FDR proposed the GI Bill, which provided a slew of opportunities to anyone leaving the military on good terms, including post-secondary education, medical care, unemployment insurance, job counseling, and low-cost loans for homes and businesses. This bill passed unanimously in June of 1944, which would be the perfect cushion for the over 15 million Americans that served in World War II.
Yeah, this is a big part of why a lot of these people had it so good when they came back, right?
Yeah. I didn't have enough time to get there, and I'll talk about that later. But if you can count by fours, it would become clear that it's time for another presidential election. And Franklin, very early on this time, declared he'd be running again. He's like, I'll do it again. Due to some Democratic Party shuffling, he dropped his steadfast running mate Wallace for Harry Truman and run on a campaign promising a strong presence of the U.S. in the United Nations. And in his standard warm and fatherly tone, encouraged his constituents not to, quote, change horses midstream in the middle of a fucking world war.
Seems reasonable. He does seem to be getting a little bit excited about the U.S. like kind of running the rest of the world.
He's Wilsonian. So, yeah. He didn't want he didn't want to run the world per se, but he wanted us to really be part of the UN, like very, very directly. So
I'm sure he also understood that when and if the Allies won the Second World War, they were going to get to do the restructuring, and that America was going to be basically one of the two countries doing most of that work along with Great Britain.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. The Republican choice for this run was the governor of New York, Thomas Dewey. While it was a steep fight, his main goal was to essentially pick on FDR for being old and tired and not having the energy to fight for his people anymore. This is absolutely fucked up, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
What I've avoided mentioning up until this point, but foreshadowed last episode, was that FDR at the time was believed to have poliomyelitis, or polio. You don't really have to deal with this highly infectious viral disease because of the vaccine regimen we take as infants, and also because of FDR, and I'll get there in a second. Usually the symptoms are mostly just fevers, while your body fights it off, but around 1% of the time, it causes permanent paralysis as the virus replicates along motor neurons, destroying them in the wake. Some more modern claims hypothesize that he actually may have had Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is an autoimmune disorder that results in rapid onset muscular nervous system damage. Huh. Regardless, the result was that from the waist down, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a mostly paralyzed man and an ambulatory wheelchair user.
Yeah.
I'm also using the term partially paralyzed, or mostly paralyzed, very loosely. FDR could only walk short distances, which, by the way, he taught himself how to do with great dedication, utilizing hidden metal braces to keep his hips and knees in place, and additional things like canes, assistance, or just like knowing how to navigate his environment. This all happened before he even ran for presidency, and it didn't stop him. But he spent considerable effort to hide this disability from the public for numerous reasons. But obviously, the biggest reason being one of the all-time F tier isms, ableism.
We got fascism and ableism in this episode.
In the same episode?
I hate it.
Fuck it. And racism, too.
Oh, big time.
Remember, about 50% of buildings in this country today, right now, 2026, are inaccessible to those with mobility issues. We were still segregated in the 1930s. There was absolutely no way that a disabled man would ever be able to hold office. We simply just were not progressive enough. Either his rivals would pick on this as proof that he couldn't stand up for his people. As horrifying as that pun is, they absolutely would have said that.
Yeah.
Or it would have just obliterated his public image to his constituents because our society was, and still is, incredibly judgmental, bigoted, and xenophobic of any and all differences that set you apart.
I wonder if, kind of like before this last run, spoilers for president, if there was any like conspiracy theories from the opposition about, like, I don't know how well he hid this. I was aware that he had become disabled around this time.
He hid it to the public. He was also disabled in 1928 before he took office. So he was still in local government at the time. He did hide this from the general public, mostly. But we'll get there. If you didn't think he was cool already, he's about to be really fucking cool.
Okay.
Before he ever set foot in office, FDR privately funded the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which would eventually discover the vaccine for polio. This is why we don't have it. Let me be clear. FDR used a wheelchair about 95% of the time, but the GOAT hated modern wheelchairs of the era. He found, and this is still a problem today, that the one-size-fits-all nature of common wheelchairs to be cumbersome, draw too much attention, and were just difficult to navigate in otherwise entirely inaccessible buildings. So he made his own out of a dining room chair and some bicycle parts.
Nice. Okay.
It was nimble and small and low profile. And he also said that when he used it, people didn't really think much about it because it looked like something you would have in your house already.
Right. And this is clearly something that everybody in his position is experiencing. It just takes the actual president and one of the most individually powerful presidents ever to be experiencing these things for any kind of change to happen, which is insane.
Yeah. FDR was known to have a disorder in general, but generally made incredible effort to hide the extent of his disabilities. He used his chair around the White House and needed help to transfer from cars to his chair. He refused to wheel to give addresses or speeches and chose specifically to either walk longer distances with a cane, with support from his advisors, or on his own entirely by utilizing local objects around him. He also requested of the press to not photograph him in compromising positions and had the Secret Service on full-time watch to interfere if a journalist decided not to follow his very fair request.
That's awesome.
He also requested a front panel be added to the Resolute desk. This is the one in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
But he would not see its installation. He would also refuse to be seated when addressing people, preferring to stand to address Congress every time he ever did it and deliver national addresses. So yeah, now take everything I've said about this guy and add the fact that he was America's first and only disabled president.
Yeah, that's pretty badass.
Absolutely. And Dewey, in standard Republican fashion, decided to run his campaign on calling Franklin Delano Roosevelt an old, tired, haggard-looking cripple.
Okay, Dewey, what the fuck are you gonna do, though?
Chair or no chair, FDR would kick Dewey's ass. 55.95% of voter turnout, probably because everyone else was at war, out for a 432 electoral vote and 36 state win to 99 vote and 12 state commanding 53.4% of the popular vote.
That's still a big win.
Another banger.
Yeah.
With another 4 years secured, FDR would remain president, but unfortunately not for the full period he earned. Despite everything and all the odds he defied, it would ultimately be smoking to take the big man down. A renowned chain smoker, FDR was diagnosed with hypertension, atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, causing angina pectoris, and congestive heart failure in 1944.
Oof.
Despite all of the effort to rest and take it easy, everyone who knew about this understood his days were numbered. And even a year into his fourth term, he told a few confidants that he was likely going to step down after the war was complete.
Yeah.
After returning from the Yalta Conference in 1945, which is the one where we decided how to break up Germany, I think.
Okay.
He would address Congress while seated.
For the first time, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes. Many people who saw him were taken aback by how ill and emaciated he looked. FDR had always been known to exude a warm glow about him of compassion and energy. Truly a paladin. To see the big daddy of the U.S. like this was highly grim. In late March, he took time at a getaway to recover for the UN founding meeting. And on April 12th, he'd sit down for a portrait to be painted before announcing that he had a terrible headache. He'd then slump forward unconscious, be carried to his room, and pronounced dead of an intercerebral hemorrhage.
Oh my God. Wow.
Through an endless path. Yeah, dude. Yeah. He saw the war to its end, and that was all he had left. Through an endless path of adversity, FDR faced disabled life with bravery, ambition, and resolve, just the way he managed the presidency. The Reaper comes for us all, and unfortunately at 63, FDR would be tapped on the shoulder by that which stands behind all men, because of his smoking, not because of his disability. One of the issues I'm recognizing is something I see in some of my closest loved ones who live with disabilities. Franklin simply, like they, refused to quit, even when he should have. In retrospect, he was far too ill to take the presidency for a fourth time, and even when his working hours were relegated to just 4 hours a day. This required a game of smoke and mirrors around him while trusted advisors and his wife helped fill the gaps in his final years. Franklin ultimately would push himself too hard, but how can you blame him? When you live your life like this, you get used to pushing yourself more than you should.
Yeah.
And seeing the world move around you, especially in one of the most powerful positions in the world, you're even more motivated to throw your well-being and comfort to the wind to make it work.
Yeah.
It's something that I honor deeply and I respect. But lack of knowledge of your personal extent is pretty common with people that I hold very close, who suffer from similar things. I understand.
It's got to be like a difficult line to draw for yourself, especially when everybody is expecting from you more than you can realistically handle.
Yeah. Unfortunately, these shortcomings resulted in some missteps in national policy during the Reconstruction era, but the legacy he left was foundational to our country as a whole. So a lot of people around him were having to do policy stuff for him while he couldn't. But the stuff he did do while he could, I think, is foundational to our society today. So essentially every social program or method of government control designed to support the U.S. citizens and those in need was trailblazed by this man and his wife. I didn't mention it in the play-by-plays, but Eleanor Roosevelt was in vocal support of African Americans during an era of our country where anti-lynching legislation needed to be passed and hadn't yet. Unfortunately, Roosevelt wouldn't be passing any of that. It's hard to tell why. He was quoted as saying it would impact his Democratic holding too much, which he may have been correct.
It probably would have, and it's disappointing that he made that choice looking back on it, but he probably would have lost a lot of Democratic support just by saying it's actually not okay to hang black people just because you're racist.
But he did pass Executive Order 8802, which prevented employers from discriminating against ethnicity or race, and established the Federal Employment Practices Committee to enforce that policy. So he did some.
Yeah.
From trails and tables in the parks to making sure your money actually fucking exists, ending child labor, implementing a 40-hour work week, overtime, and most of the power infrastructure in rural America today. All of this and so much more was thanks to FDR, the New Deal, and his work to save this country from itself. So many policies we have now that weren't from him use his foundation as a springboard to keep pressing into his ultimate goal of protecting this nation's most vulnerable and securing us the rights to jobs, healthcare, and a happy, healthy life free of fear. I started research for this episode to try and figure out how life was back when shit like money actually worked. I absolutely got consumed by the I'm using absolutely so much, monstrous legacy FDR left behind. If I ever get to the episode I originally intended to create, I think I did some excellent groundwork here. I just couldn't not be enthralled by the story of this paragon of support, compassion, and charisma. Franklin Delano Roosevelt truly was the goddess of all POTUSes. Next time you sit on a national park bench, remember all caps when you spell that man's name.
Capital FDR.
ER.
I guess you can stay on Mount Rushmore. I guess you can stay.
Dude, my original goal was to be like, here's how the economy was when boomers were able to take advantage of everything and get houses and go to college and shit.
Right.
But I was like, well, who set up those policies? And I had to keep going back. And I was like, well, why did he set up those policies? And so like the first episode's like the Great Depression. Second episode is like, and what FDR did. Second episode, I was like, well, I have to complete the FDR legacy. So I did. And now now I can actually write the episode on like how we produced all of the economic growth after the Second World War.
Yeah, we just needed 2 hours of explainers before writing that episode.
It's important. It's important.
It is.
And people, if you look up FDR, a lot of libraries that are established to like be kind of like anti-FDR are saying that like, because this happens with presidents, that like he didn't save the economy, the Second World War did, which I can see an argument for. But we were already on the upswing well into his presidency. Like, with a small dip and then an immediate uptick again. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Even if not, we wouldn't have Social Security or the GI Bill or the Glass-Steagall Act or like any of the shit that I've been yelling about for the last 2 episodes. Like, FDR fucking did so much for this country.
I felt like I was saying the same thing a lot in reaction to you telling me shit like, oh, this is why your bank account is insured, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of it is stuff that seems really basic and it's just not something that as a pretty young person, it's not something I can imagine not being around.
Yeah.
And like some of these labor laws and stuff, it seems so basic in my vision of the US, and so much of it came from the same place, which is fascinating.
I'm so endlessly impressed by FDR, and I feel like I'll keep this in, but now at the end of this episode, I'm starting to feel like I didn't give enough time to Eleanor, who also was a fucking powerhouse. This power couple was probably one of the best presidencies to happen to our country, and both of them back when like First Lady fucking meant something. You know what I mean? She was out doing shit. So incredibly impressive. I can't say it enough. Honestly, like if it weren't for FDR and his wife, like our country wouldn't have any of the shit that we have today. That gives us even the bare minimum of support and help that companies have figured out how to work around. Like, it's just crazy to me.
Yeah, I hate to glaze a president, but it's pretty hard to disagree.
Dude, like one of the best presidents of all time. Like he did some awful shit. And that is horrible. But I could also make an argument where like he did what he did in 1966 because of local pressure at the time. I mean, right? We became a nationalist society. So Asians were easy to identify, and unlike Germans, and so they got put in camps and shit. Like, it's not like it's good, but
of course not.
I can get it. Like,
I get how it happened,
especially because a lot of his racial policy was dictated by the party. So, why he like didn't make lynching didn't outlaw it. So like there's plenty of shortcomings, but again, the massive advantage given to us by him is obviously it takes 2 hours to fucking state. So yeah. That's FDR, man. The GOAT. I got nothing more to say. That's a mic drop.
All right.
Rest in peace, brother. See ya. Sorry, I forgot about that part.